Hi. Okay, thanks Hui Hui, and thanks everyone for listening to me today. I guess the reason why people are here is because there's a feeling that there's a problem which needs a solution. So the things that I'm going to talk about are very simple, right? First, I'm going to talk about what is the problem. Then I'm going to suggest what I think is a solution. But I'm also going to talk about what I think is actually a distraction from the solution. So, starting from the beginning. Foreigners in Singapore are not the problem. The nationalities and skill sets and personalities and habits of foreigners in Singapore are also not the problem. The number of foreigners in Singapore is not the problem. The pace at which foreigners are entering Singapore is also not the problem. The problem is something else. The problem is that Singapore does not take at the moment a universal human rights approach. By this I mean an approach which guarantees basic labour rights and standards, which mean that all workers can secure a decent life. So the problem is really in the legal, political and social structures of how work is valued, our labour laws and practices and the limitations of our labour movement. There's a story that we hear again and again that's supposed to show the problem with the employment situation in Singapore. And the story is this. I'm just going to use the name Robin because it's gender neutral. Robin, my example, used to be a PMET. Maybe Robin has a degree or a master's degree or even a PhD, but now a foreigner has Robin's old job and Robin is driving a taxi. This is a story that we keep hearing, especially on the internet. This story is supposed to tell us that Singaporeans have been deprived of our rightful places. But it seems to me that the more important question to ask when you hear the story is this. Why is driving a taxi seen as a kind of shorthand for struggling financially? Why is the notion of driving a taxi supposed to represent a loss of rightful status? The question I'm asking is related to the fundamental issue of how society is set up. Because driving a taxi is useful, honest, worthwhile work, which provides an important service to other members of society. We will always need taxi drivers in Singapore. So why is it that according to this story that people keep repeating, that driving a taxi does not come, according to this story, with the payment conditions and rights that we think necessary to secure ourselves decent lives? I think the question we should ask ourselves first and foremost is how can we ensure that every kind of work, no matter who does it, whether they are local or foreign, comes with what is necessary to secure a decent life. Because as a society, there must be lots of room for us to do things. There is a lot of room for us to do things differently from how we're doing it now. We could decide that everyone should have their needs met and structure employment protection and employment structures accordingly. We could change labour laws and social infrastructure so that everyone is taken care of no matter what you do. Because society does not only need PMETs, and a good quality of life should not only belong to PMETs. Society needs people to work at driving taxis, cleaning toilets, taking care of children, answering telephones, emptying hospital bedpans, fixing pipes, wiring lights, and laying bricks. All of these need workers, and all of these workers should be taken care of. Whoever you are, whatever your job, you should be able to eat enough nutritious food. You shouldn't have to worry about what happens if you fall ill. You should know that your performance will be given a fair evaluation at work, no matter what your race is, or whether you prefer to date men or women. You should have time and energy left over after work to have a social life and a family life. You should have access to culture and to hobbies. Your children should be able to go to a decent school and have a chance to realize their dreams. You should be able to put aside enough to retire in your later years. In short, whether you are a PMET or taxi driver, whether you are a domestic worker or CEO, no matter who you are, whether you are local or foreign, you should have rights. Aware, and I work for Aware is a gender equality advocacy group. So we are strongly conscious of the need to rethink how society values and rewards work. Women's labour has traditionally been undervalued. The work that is associated with women or often performed by women is considered unimportant and undeserving of protection. This is part of why migrant domestic workers have such inadequate labour rights in Singapore. It's because the work that they do is thought to be not real work, and it's thought that it is low skill because it's seen as work that women naturally do and women should be doing for free. What people call women's work, household chores, childcare, elder care, other forms of caregiving, nursing for example, they all attend to basic human needs, but it doesn't really make a profit. So even though it's very valuable, society has not traditionally thought of this work as requiring the same level of compensation and recognition as other kinds of work. This is the mindset that needs to change. What we need is societal structures that acknowledge and ensure the dignity of all work and all workers, whether they are foreign or local, without discrimination. That's the problem. What's the solution? What does this mean? What does it mean to guarantee everybody the chance to secure a decent life, regardless of what kind of work they do? It means a minimum wage. It means protection against unfair dismissal. It means the freedom for all workers to join and participate in unions that can take part in effective collective bargaining over pay, safety standards, leave entitlements. It means anti-discrimination laws that require employers to treat all workers decently. It means egalitarian state policies that ensure genuine equal access to housing, healthcare, and education for everyone. That's, in my view, the solution. What is not the solution? Well, how will focusing on foreigners and immigration secure these things? My answer is that it won't. By casting foreigners, or their presence, or their personalities, or their numbers, or their work conditions, by casting foreigners as the main obstacle to Singaporeans obtaining fair wages and labour rights, we do harm not just to them, but also to ourselves. Some people are creating increasingly a hostile and unsafe society. We all know about the response to the Philippines Independence Day celebration. Put on your number 4s with full battle order, one person tweeted. Gilbert Gold posted on Facebook, "We will treat your celebration as a declaration of war." This kind of violent, aggressive and militarized language has no place in a human rights movement. We are kidding ourselves if we think that the only threats to human rights come from the state and not also from non-state actors who deploy this kind of language and this kind of rhetoric. We should vocally oppose, if we believe in human rights and universal human rights, you have to vocally oppose any politics that invokes this kind of threat. And it goes beyond the online space. Recently, someone told me that colleagues of his were confronted on public transport and told that they should go back to their own country. Recently, the media reported widely on a spitting incident at a bus interchange. 2 people were waving their pink ICs at each other and quizzing each other to find out, hey, are you Singaporean enough? Singaporean enough for what? Since when do we have to be Singaporean enough, or even Singaporean at all, not to be spat on in public or not to be threatened in public? This kind of behavior only encourages other kinds of ugly profiling and policing. Because how do you start to decide when you meet someone to ask the question whether or not they are Singaporean enough? How do you do this? Well, most people do this by appealing to stereotypes about ethnicity, about race, about the language that they hear people use, about the forms of speech, about their family, like are they married to a foreigner, or they ask questions about their names, if their names sound like, quote, foreign names, unquote. This kind of policing doesn't help people to stand together. It doesn't help the battle for universal rights. Instead, it divides people by encouraging fear and suspicion about diversity. When people raise concerns about immigration policy, this may not be their intention. The intention may not be to encourage this. But if you continually emphasize that the true blue Singaporeans deserve more than others, belong more than others, and are being cheated out of their place in society by others, then the only possible outcome is xenophobia against those others. If we repeat again and again that the simple presence of some people here is illegitimate, that their presence is illegitimate and excessive, if we keep saying, your job is the reason why I don't have a job, then we are breeding the conditions for hostility and violence. It is inevitable. Because it doesn't matter what our intentions are when we say this, it matters what we communicate. And at the moment, too many of the messages are divisive ones. What we need to be looking out for is universal labour rights, and we won't achieve this by pointing the finger at foreigners. We should focus less on this question of who falls within the so-called deserving group of true blue Singaporeans. Instead, people should be uniting with an inclusive approach to call for universal rights, labour rights for everyone who does work, and recognition for all kinds of work and workers, local or foreign, because that's what everyone who is part of society deserves.